Okay, good evening. At first, I convey my heartfelt thanks to the Axis Medical School and all participants to join this program. And today, first I will start the orbit as I got some requests from my students, though it is a bit less interested topics. So, first of all, I'll discuss some applied anatomy about the orbit. The orbit is a bony cavity or bony socket, and the shape of this orbit is pear shape. And as you can see over here, the medial wall of the two orbit, the medial wall of the two orbit are parallel with each other, and the distance between the two medial wall is about 25 millimeter. And the two lateral walls, they form 90-degree angle with each others. And another important thing is the interorbital portion of the optic nerve, as you can see over here, from the back of the globe and up to the optic canal. These interorbital portions of the optic nerve, the length of this interorbital portion of the optic nerve is about 25 centimeter, which is more than the back of the globe and to the optic canal. So the advantage of this, in case of significant proptosis, there is a less stress to the optic nerve. As you know, the orbit is surrounded by some vital structures. Superiorly, it is related to anterior cranial fossa, and medial to the orbit, there is nasal cavity and ethmoidal sinus. Inferior to the orbit, there is maxillary sinus, and laterally, the orbit is related to middle cranial fossa and temporal fossa. Each orbit is made up by 7 bones, and they are frontal, ethmoidal, maxillary, lacrimal, zygomatic, sphenoid, and palatal. Sometimes you may get a MCQ question, how many bones are involved in the formations of the orbit? It is 7, 8, or 9. That's why you may get a questions in the MCQ. So you have to remember these things. Come to the formations of the different floors of the orbit. First, we can look at the medial wall of the orbit. The medial wall of the orbit is formed by the 4 bones. From anterior to posterior, they are frontal process of maxilla, lacrimal bone, orbital plate of the ethmoid bone, and body of the sphenoid. And the most important landmarks in the medial wall is the lacrimal fossa, where the lacrimal sac lies. The medial wall is clinically significant because it is the most thinnest wall of the orbit. And most of the part of the ethmoid bone is so thin, it's very thin, like pepper. And hence it is called lamina papyracea. This lamina papyracea, it is a Latin word, and the meaning of this lamina papyracea is pepper thin. This is also called orbital lamina. And as it is very thin, like pepper, so it is easily fractures and may cause entrapment of medial rectus. And as it is very thin, another as it is more thin, it is clinically significant because in case of children, the infective focus from the ethmoid sinus can spread to the orbit and can cause preseptal cellulitis, orbital cellulitis. So this is again very important, medial wall, because it is very thin. Next, come to the floor. The floor of the orbit is formed by 3 bones. Maxillary bones in medially, on laterally it is formed by the zygomatic bone, and posteriorly it is formed by the palatine bone. And the most important landmarks in the floor is the infraorbital groove or foramen, which transmits infraorbital nerve and basis. It is clinically significant because the infraorbital nerve is affected in the fracture floor of the orbit, and it is more common in the blowout fracture. And blowout fracture is one kind of fracture. It occurs due to the sudden rise of intraorbital pressure. And for that, the important prerequisites is the blunt trauma with the objects, and the size of the objects is correspond to the orbital rim or more than that. When there is a floor in the fracture, sudden rise of intraorbital pressure, so there is a fracture in the floor of the orbit, and also there is a fracture in the medial wall of the orbit most commonly. And if there is a fracture in the floor of the orbit, the infraorbital nerve will be affected, and there will be loss of sensation in the lower lip, cheek, side of the nose, upper lip, and upper lip. And as you can see over here, this is the infraorbital group through which the infraorbital nerve is transmitted. And this is I don't know whether it is visible or not. When there is a fracture floor of the orbit, there is a herniation of inferior rectus into the floor. So the eye cannot move upwards, as you can see in this picture. So when looking up, the right eye is moving up, but in the left eye, the eye cannot move up. And in this case, the patients may complain vertical diplopia. Diplopia means double vision. So the floor is clinically very important, because if it is fractured, the infraorbital nerve will be affected. And if the infraorbital nerve will be affected, there will be loss of sensation in the lower lip, cheek, side of the nose, upper lip, and upper lip. And another important thing, as below the floor there is a maxillary antrum. So is any carcinoma in the maxillary antrum that can invade the floor and metastasis to the orbit. So these two things we have to keep in mind. Next, come to the lateral wall of the orbit, and it is formed by the greater wing of the sphenoid and zygomatic bone. And it is related to the medial cranial fossa and temporal fossa. And it is the thickest and strongest bone of the orbit. So the thickest wall is the lateral wall, and the thinnest wall is the medial wall. And next, come to the roof. The roof is formed by the lesser wing of the sphenoid, orbital plate of the frontal bone, and it contains lacrimal fossa for the lacrimal gland. And it is related to the anterior cranial fossa. Above the roof, there is anterior cranial fossa and frontal sinus. The most important landmark in the roof, there is supraorbital notch through which the supraorbital nerve transmits. And it is at the junctions of lateral 2/3 and medial 1/3 of the supraorbital margin. Why it is significant? Because during local anesthesia, the infiltrating agents who infiltrate in supraorbital notch to block the supraorbital nerve, which is a branch of frontal nerve. It is also important because if any trauma to the dura mater, there is a leakage of cerebrospinal fluid into the orbit or into the nose or both. So any trauma to the anterior cranial fossa, the CSF can leak into the orbit through this route. The posterior end of the orbit is the apex of the orbit. And there are two orifices in the apex of the orbit. One is optic canal and another is superior orbital fissure. Optic canal, it connects the orbit to the middle cranial fossa, and it transmits optic nerve and ophthalmic artery. And superior orbital fissure, all of you know, it is bounded by greater and lesser wings of sphenoid bone, and it is divided into three compartments, upper, middle, and lower, by the part of common tendinous ring. And through the upper compartment, it transmits lacrimal, frontal, cochlear nerve, and superior ophthalmic vein. In the middle part, it transmits superior and inferior divisions of the oculomotor nerve and nasociliary branch of the ophthalmic divisions of the trigeminal nerve and abducens nerve. Through the inferior part, it transmits inferior ophthalmic vein. Now comes to what are the contents of the orbit. The contents of the orbits are eyeball, extraocular muscles. There are four recti: superior rectus, inferior rectus, medial rectus, and lateral rectus, and two oblique muscles. One is superior oblique and another is inferior oblique, and LPS, levator pulvis superioris. So these are the extraocular muscles. Then orbital fat, nerves. And what are the nerves? Optic nerve. There are motor nerves. Third nerve, fourth nerve, sixth nerve. They supplies all the extraocular muscles. And sensory nerves is the ophthalmic divisions of the trigeminal nerve, autonomic nerves to the lacrimal gland and ciliary ganglia. And the vessels are ophthalmic artery, superior and inferior ophthalmic veins, lymphatics. And another important structures, that is lacrimal gland and lacrimal sac. So these are the contents of the orbit. So we'll discuss some common disease of the orbit. The common disease of the orbits are preseptal cellulitis, orbital cellulitis, thyroid eye disease, orbital neoplasms, non-neoplastic vascular abnormalities like cavernous sinus thrombosis, carotid cavernous fistula, and some cystic lesions. The important ones are dermoid cyst and metastatic tumors. The most common is the preseptal cellulitis. It is more common but less serious. What is preseptal cellulitis? If there is any infections or inflammations that confine to the anterior to the orbital septums. So in preseptal cellulitis, the infective focus will not extend beyond the orbital septums. It will confine to the orbital septums. And what is orbital septum? It is a fibrous sheet or connective tissue sheet that attaches the tarsus and orbital margins. And the clinical features of the preseptal cellulitis are the eyelids are swollen and inflamed. And as the infective focus are confined to the orbital septum, not extend beyond the orbit, so the orbit will not be involved. As orbit will not be involved, so there will be no proptosis. And that is the ocular movement will not be restricted. This is very important clinical features to differentiate between preseptal cellulitis and the orbital cellulitis. So as orbit is not involved, there is no proptosis and ocular movement will not be restricted. And it is also equally important features of the preseptal cellulitis. The optic nerves will not be involved. So as you know, the important functions of the optic nerves are visual acuity, color visions, contrast sensitivity, and pupillary reactions. So in preseptal cellulitis, the visual acuity, color vision, contrast sensitivity will not be affected. And what is contrast sensitivity? Contrast sensitivity, as you can see, what is the color of the sky? It is the blue color. But in the blue, there is also light blue and some dark blue is there. So if you have good contrast sensitivity, you can appreciate whatever blue color is there. But if the contrast sensitivity is compromised, you will see the sky only blue, but you cannot appreciate light blue or dark blue. অন্যভাবে যদি বলি, suppose your একটা background, suppose what is my background? The background is the white and the letters, the font type is the black color. So against the white background, the black letters easily anybody can appreciate. এটার জন্য খুব ভালো কন্ট্রাস্ট সেন্সিটিভিটি দরকার নেই। কিন্তু এটা যদি এরকম হতো যে ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড ইজ দ্য ব্লু কালার অ্যান্ড দ্য লেটার্স আর দ্য ব্লু, খুব ভালো কন্ট্রাস্ট সেন্সিটিভিটি না হলে ইটস ভেরি ডিফিকাল্ট টু অ্যাপ্রিশিয়েট। So this is called contrast sensitivity. So this is the function, contrast sensitivity is the functions of the optic nerve. So if the optic nerve is involved, the visual acuity, color vision, the contrast sensitivity will be affected. But most important thing is the pupil will be affected. And normally when the light falls on the pupil becomes small, and that is called pupillary reactions. But when the pupil is involved, optic nerve is involved, the pupil will be dilated and will not react to light. It will be fixed. So in the preceptor cellulitis, there will be no proptosis. The ocular movement will not be restricted and optic nerve will not be affected. And treatment is very simple. The systemic broad spectrum antibiotic and painkillers. But the orbital cellulitis, it is a very serious condition. And in orbital cellulitis, the infective focus, they spreads beyond the orbital septums, and that causes active infections or inflammations of the orbital tissue. So as I mentioned earlier also, in orbital cellulitis, the infective focus will extend beyond the orbital septums, and orbital tissue will be involved here. And the clinical features are the eyelids are swollen and inflamed, as you can see over here. And conjunctiva is camosed. Camosis of the conjunctiva and hyperemia. That is, it is congested. And camosis, what is camosis? That is edema of the conjunctiva, because there is a passive venous congestion. That's why there is a edema. And as there the orbital tissue is actively involved, so there is a proptosis, axial proptosis, and ocular movement is restricted. And optic nerve also involves, because optic nerve is the contents of the orbit. So when optic nerve is involved, the functions of the optic nerve, that is visual acuity, color visions, contrast sensitivity, are diminished, and the pupil will be dilated and non-reacting to the light. You can see over here, the pupil is dilated. It is dilated. So that means this is the orbital cellulitis. So we can easily differentiate the orbital cellulitis from the preceptor cellulitis. If there is in the orbital cellulitis, there will be camosis. The orbit will be involved, so there will be proptosis. The ocular movement will be restricted, and optic nerve functions will be affected. So this is very serious conditions. We have to do some investigations, complete blood count, blood culture, X-ray orbit, CT scan of the orbit. And as it is a very serious condition, we consider it as ocular emergency. And if you suspect this orbital cellulitis, one should refer the patients to the tertiary hospital for immediate management. And it demands intravenous broad spectrum antibiotics. The complications of the orbital cellulitis, if the infective focus can spread to the brain, it can cause meningitis, brain abscess, cavernous sinus thrombosis, even death. And the source of infections in case of preceptor cellulitis and orbital cellulitis, both the cases are same, and the source of infections are from adjacent structures of the orbit, like paranasal sinuses, surrounding sinus, eyelid and face, and dental infections, lacrimal sac, supposed dactylcystitis, infection of the lacrimal sac, that can spread to the orbit, that can spread to the orbital septum, so can cause preceptor cellulitis or orbital cellulitis. And these preceptor cellulitis and orbital cellulitis may be due to the bacteremia or septicemia. These are the differentiating points between the preceptor cellulitis and orbital cellulitis. If we consider the extensions, as I mentioned, the preceptor cellulitis, the infective focus, they confine to the eyelids, the anterior to the orbital septum. But in case of orbital cellulitis, the infective focus spreads beyond the orbital septum into the orbital tissue. So orbit will be actively involved in the orbital cellulitis. Proptosis is absent in case of preceptor cellulitis, but it is present in orbital cellulitis. Ocular movement, it is not restricted in the preceptor cellulitis, but in orbital cellulitis, at orbit is involved, the ocular movement will be restricted. Optic nerve involvements. In preceptor cellulitis, the optic nerve is not involved, but in orbital cellulitis, the optic nerve is involved, and due to the involvement of the optic nerve, the visual acuity, color visions, contrast sensitivity will be compromised, and the pupil will be dilated and fixed. Next, come to the thyroid eye disease. Thyroid eye disease, it is also called thyroid associated orbitopathy, and it is also called Graves' ophthalmopathy. It is the most common cause of the bilateral and unilateral proptosis in adults. The cause is unknown, but strongly it is believed it is the autoimmune disease and most common disease that affecting the orbits. If you consider the etiology and the risk factors, can be associated with hyperthyroidism, mostly in about 77% cases. But the thyroid eye disease also associated with euthyroid, that means normal thyroid functions, or even with hypothyroid. And it is more common in the female than male. The most important risk factors or predisposing factors is the smoking, and it is a strongest risk factors which you can modify it. And another risk factors is the radioactive iodines that is used to treat hyperthyroidism. And these are the, and now come to the pathogenesis of the thyroid eye disease. So if we can understand the pathogenesis of the thyroid eye disease, we can understand the clinical features of the thyroid eye disease. So the exact pathogenesis we don't know, but it is strongly believed it is caused by immunological mechanisms. And there is a reaction between the activated T lymphocytes with the antigens that presents a target tissue. And the target tissues are thyroid gland and orbital content. Our concern is the orbital contents. in the orbital content, what are the structures that we know? The important there are two things occur simultaneously. One is there is a stimulation of the fibroblast, and another is there is a inflammatory reactions. And these reactions occurs due to release of cytokines and other mediators like lymphocytes, plasma cells, and macrophages. So first look at when there is a reaction occurs between the T lymphocytes with the antigens that presents in the target tissue, and of the target tissue is the fibroblast, and the fibroblasts are located in the extraocular muscles. So when the fibroblast is stimulated in the extraocular muscles, the size of the extraocular muscles will be enlarged, and it will be enlarged by 8 times. So you see the enlargement of the extraocular muscles. This is one. And secondly, the fibroblast also located in the orbital fat and connective tissue. So there is proliferations of the orbital fat and the connective tissue. And in the connective tissue, there is glycose aminoglycan. So there is an increased secretions of the glycose aminoglycan. And as you know, the glycose aminoglycans are osmotically active particles. So there is osmotic retentions of the water, osmotic retention of the. So you see, due to stimulation of the fibroblast, there is enlargement of the extraocular muscles, proliferations of the orbital fat and connective tissue, and there is a osmotic retentions of the water. All these things, they causes increased volume of the orbital contents. So the volume, the contents of the orbit will be increased, and that increased volume of the orbit causes proptosis, that is called exophthalmos. Exophthalmos is the proptosis due to the thyroid dysfunctions, and the consequence of the proptosis is when the proptosis is severe, then the eyelid cannot close, inability to close the eyelid. So when eyelid cannot close, so part of the cornea remain exposed, and that causes exposure keratopathy, and that is a very serious consequence. If your cornea is damaged, the eyeball will be damaged. There will be loss of sight, loss of eyeball. And another consequence of the increased volume of the content, that is the optic nerve compression. So this is one part when there is a stimulation of the fibroblasts that locate in the extraocular muscles, orbital fat and connective tissue, and the connective tissue that causes enlargement of the extraocular muscles, proliferation of the orbital fat, and increased secretion of the CAG. And all these things, they cause increased volume of the orbital content, and that causes proptosis, exposure keratopathy, and optic nerve compression. This optic nerve compression is called optic neuropathy. Once optic nerve is involved, the functions of the optic nerve, that is visual acuity, color vision, contrast sensitivity, will be compromised, that is diminished, and the pupil will be dilated and fixed. So this is a very serious consequence of the thyroid eye disease. And in other side, when there is a inflammations, there is a reactions between the activated T lymphocytes and the antigens, and that causes release of cytokines and other mediators like lymphocytes, plasma cells, and macrophages. And these chemical mediators, inflammatory mediators, infiltrates into the extraocular muscles. So there is a cellular infiltrates and inflammations of the extraocular muscles, and that causes inflammations of the extraocular muscles. When inflammation will be subsides, that causes degeneration and fibrosis of the extraocular muscles when inflammation will subside. So this fibrosis of the extraocular muscle causes restrictions of the ocular movements, and that is called restricted myopathy. And if the ocular movement, binocular movement is restricted, there will be diplopia, double visions. And at the same time, when there is a these reactions occurs between the activity lymphocytes and antigens into the soft tissue. In the soft tissue, the cellular infiltration in the soft tissue, that is eyelid, conjunctiva. If inflammation occurs there, the eyelid will be swollen, swollen eyelids. There will be conjunctival hyperemia and chemosis, that is edema of the conjunctiva. So these are the pathogenesis. You see, there is a, so one is increased volume of the orbital content, and that causes this consequence, proptosis, exposure keratopathy, and optic nerve compressions. And another is there is a due to degeneration and fibrosis of the extraocular muscles, which occurs due to inflammation, active inflammation in the extraocular muscles, causes restrictive myopathy. And another is when inflammation infiltrates in the soft tissue, there will be eyelid swollen, the conjunctival hyperemia and chemosis. And the visual impairment, the loss of vision is most likely due to the optic nerve compressions and exposure keratopathy. And if there is any choroidal fold, there is pressures. So these are the things. If you can understand the pathogenesis, we can understand the clinical features. Though the systemic features of the thyroidosis, as you mentioned, the thyroid eye disease can be associated with thyrotoxicosis, hyperthyroidism, though it can be also occurs in the euthyroid, normal thyroid functions, or hypothyroid. So if it is associated with thyrotoxicosis, you can get some clinical systemic features in suppose increased pulse rate, palpitations. So you have to check all these things, pulse rate and palpitations. And consider the, if you consider the central nervous systems, there will be tremor, insomnia, and anxiety. And most important is the in the metabolic systems, there is increased appetite. The appetite will be increased. But surprisingly, there will be loss of weight because of increased metabolism. So due to increased metabolism, the weight will be lost. Though appetite will be increased. A lot of intake, but weight loss. And excessive sweating. This excessive sweating is very common features of the thyrotoxicosis. And heat intolerance. And heat intolerance বলতে আমরা কি বুঝি? Heat intolerance বলতে আমরা কি বুঝি? যেমন শীতকালে সবারই আমরা ব্ল্যাঙ্কেট ইউজ করি। এটা হচ্ছে যে কমন, শীতকালে আমরা ব্ল্যাঙ্কেট লাগি। কিন্তু thyrotoxicosis হলে সে শীতকালেও even in the winter season you will not use blanket, and that is called heat intolerance. And in the if you consider the GIT, gastrointestinal system, there will be diarrhea. So these are the systemic features it may be associated with the when the thyroid eye disease is associated with the thyrotoxicosis. But you will not get these systemic features if the thyroid eye disease is associated with normal thyroid functions. Our concern is the ocular sign. The common ocular signs are the eyelid retractions in the primary gaze. What is primary gaze? In a straight ahead positions, and that is called dull dimple sign. Normally, we know the upper eyelids covers upper 2 mm of the cornea. Upper 2 mm of the cornea will be covered by the upper eyelids, and the positions of the lower eyelids at the level of the lower limbus. When there is a lid retractions, the upper sclera above the limbus and sclera below the limbus will be visible, and that is called lid retractions. And another is lid lag. It is also called von Graff's sign. Normally, during looking down, the eyeball will move down and the eyelid follow the movement of the eyeball. But in case of thyroid eye disease, the eyeball will move down, but the eyelid, the upper eyelids cannot follow the movement of the eyeball, and that is called lid lag. And soft tissue involvements, as I mentioned earlier. Why soft tissue involvements? because there is inflammatory, there is a infiltrations of the inflammatory cells into the eyelids conjunctiva, so that causes swollen eyelids, conjunctival hyperemia, and chemosis. What is chemosis? Edema of the conjunctiva. And exophthalmos, that is proptosis, when there is an increased interorbital volume, and that will cause proptosis, and it is the most common cause of bilateral and unilateral proptosis in the adults. And exophthalmos is the proptosis due to the thyroid dysfunctions. And the proptosis over here, it will be axial. So this is the most common cause of unilateral and bilateral proptosis in the adult. And severe proptosis compromise the lid closure. The lid cannot be closed, and that is called legophthalmos, and that lead to exposure keratopathy. So this is a serious consequence of the proptosis. If there is exposure keratopathy, if the cornea is lost, the infective focus will get access inside the eye, and that causes endophthalmitis, panophthalmitis. Ultimately, there is a possibility of loss of sight and loss of eye. And restrictive myopathy, when there is a inflammations in the extraocular muscles, and when the inflammation will subside, there will be degeneration and fibrosis, and that degeneration and fibrosis causes restrictions of the ocular movement, and that is called restrictive myopathy, and that leads to diplopia, that is double vision. Patient will complain double vision. And the consequence of muscle involvement, the most commonly involved muscles, the inferior rectus, and the second most is the medial rectus, then superior rectus, then lateral rectus. So these are the sequence. So these are the investigations we do in case of thyroid eye disease, thyroid profile, ultrasonography, CT scan, and MRI of the orbit. And one important thing is in the CT scan, we get thick extraocular muscle with tendon sparing. The muscle will be enlarged, but tendon will not be affected. Tendon will be spared. This is why it is important. It is important because in another important disease of the orbit, that is pseudotumor, inflammatory orbital syndromes. This idiopathic inflammatory orbital disease, in that case also there will be axial proptosis, and there are also extraocular muscle enlargement. But in that case, there will be not only the extraocular muscle will be enlarged, the tendon also affected, the tendon also enlarged. But in thyroid eye disease, only the extraocular muscle will be enlarged, but tendon will not be affected. And when there is optic nerve will be affected, so as we know, one of the important, the visual field is the functions of the optic nerve. So there will be some scotoma, central scotoma or paracentral scotoma, and to exclude that, we can do visual field analysis. The management is, though it is not our concern, so but you have to know, in case of mild, the most important thing, you have to, if the patient is a smoker, the smoking should be stopped. And some artificial clear eye drops, lubricant, which is helpful, and topical anti-inflammatory agents if there is inflammations. Head elevation is also helpful during sleeping to reduce the periorbital edema. And if there is a legophthalmos, if the patients cannot lead the close during sleep, so eyelids should be tapped with the tap as micropore to prevent the exposure keratopathy. That is called eyelid tapping during sleep in exposure keratopathy to take care of cornea. And in case of moderate to severe case, sometimes we prescribe the systemic steroids, oral prednisolone, 60 to 80 milligrams per day initially, and then IV methylprednisolone also options. And in moderate to severe cases, surgery may be the options to save the optic nerve when there is a gross proptosis. If you see there is indications, the most important is the proptosis that causes the exposure keratopathy, or that causes optic nerve compression. How we can appreciate the optic nerve is compressed? If we look at the pupil, if we consider the color visions and contrast sensitivity, visual acuity, all these things are the parameter of the optic nerve compression. So if any parameters are if you affected, then you think the optic nerve is compressed. So in that case, there is indication of orbital decompression surgery. That means you have to fracture the floor of the orbit or medial wall of the orbit so that some orbital contents can accommodate. And in case if there is strabismus, you have we need to do strabismus surgery. That is strabismus is squint surgery and lead surgery. So these are the things demands when there is a moderate to severe surgery. Now come to the orbital neoplasms. Some common orbital neoplasm in the children. So this is important again because sometimes you will get the short note. What are the common orbital neoplasm in the children? So one is hematoma. As you know all, this is the abnormal growth of normal tissue in the normal side. Abnormal growth of normal tissue in normal side. This is called hematoma, capillary hemangioma, lymphangioma, and there are some choristoma, that is normal tissue growth in an abnormal locations, and that are dermoid, epidermoid, lipodermoids. Some vascular tumors, capillary hemangioma, lymphangioma. Some neural tumors, optic nerve glioma. In optic nerve glioma, it is also axial proptosis, neurofibroma, mesenchymal tumor, rhabdomyosarcoma. This is the most common primary malignant tumor in the orbit of children. So in the children, sometimes the Viva or MCQ, students may get confused. The most common malignant tumor of the orbit is the rhabdomyosarcoma, but most common primary malignant tumor of the eyeball is the retinoblastoma. So retinoblastoma is the tumor of the eyeball. Rhabdomyosarcoma is the malignant tumor of the orbit. So there is a difference between the orbit and eyeball. And some metastatic tumor, neuroblastoma, retinoblastoma, and leukemia. And some orbital neoplasms in the adults. The common tumors are vascular tumors, cavernous hemangioma, lymphangioma, neural tumor, neurofibroma, meningioma, lacrimal gland tumors, hematoma and choristoma, and some metastatic tumor, bronchial carcinoma, breast carcinoma, and carcinoma antrum, that is of the maxillary sinus, that invade floor of the orbit and invade the metastasis to orbit. So these are the common neoplasms, orbital neoplasms I mentioned. And the management of the orbital tegiums, it comes first what are the common symptoms? The protrusions of the eyeball, aching pain, diplopia, that is double visions. Because binocular movement, if the binocular movement is restricted, whatever may be the cause, can be here diplopia is mainly due to the mechanical cause. It's not neurological, mechanical cause. And redness due to the passive venous congestions. When there is an orbital neoplasms, there is a venous stasis that causes redness and periocular swelling. All these things are mechanical. And if you consider the signs, the proptosis, that is protrusions of the eyeball, and by looking at the displacement of the eyeball, we can gauge what might be the cause. Suppose in case of here, you can see in the first pictures, there is the axial proptosis. If there are any neoplasms, any growth within the muscle cone, that will cause axial proptosis. So if you get the axial proptosis, this is either thyroid eye disease or there is a growth within the muscle cone. But in case of suppose the lacrimal gland tumor, the locations of the lacrimal is in the outer part of the upper eye. So that will push the eyeball downwards and medially. So in lacrimal gland tumor, the displacement downwards and medially. But suppose here is a dermoids. If it is medially, so the eyeball will be pushed. If it is medially, it will push laterally. and visual impairments. And these visual impairments is due to the optic nerve compressions, exposure keratopathy, when there is a severe proptosis, eyeball cannot be closed, inability to close the eyelids, that is called leucophthalmos. And as a result, the most of the especially most important lower part of the cornea becomes sick, and there will be exposure keratopathy. And the consequence of the exposure keratopathy, the corneal perforations. Once there is a corneal perforations, the infective focus will get access into the inside the eye, and that will cause endophthalmitis and panophthalmitis and causes loss of sight, loss of eye. And another is due to any neoplasms orbital growth that compress from behind that causes fold in the macula. So as we know, the macula is the most important part, because why it is so important? Because the cone photoreceptors are densely populated into the macula. So if the macula is affected, macula is the central part of the retina, so your vision will be compromised. And another is mechanical restrictions to the ocular movement. It is mechanical. Why it is mechanical? Because it is not due to the involvement of the neurological cause. It is not due to the third nerve paralysis, fourth nerve paralysis, or sixth nerve paralysis. Because of the growth, that will cause mechanical restrictions of the eye movements, and that causes diplopia. And another is chemosis, that is edema of the conjunctiva, because there is a passive venous congestion because of orbital neoplasms. There will be passive venous congestion and periorbital edema. All these things are due to the passive venous congestions. And we need to do some investigations, complete blood counts to exclude the cause, peripheral blood film, X-ray skull and orbit to rule out. Orbit is important actually to rule out the meningioma and the optic nerve glioma. In optic nerve glioma, the optic foramen will be enlarged. And chest X-ray PAVU to exclude the bronchogenic carcinoma, and BScan ultrasonogram, CT, MRI, all these things we need to locate the tumors and to exclude the cause. And the treatments will depend on the, if it is localized and non-progressive, the simple treatment is simple, it is surgical excisions. But if it is metastatic, so it demands radiotherapy and chemotherapy. Now come to the sub important, it is the important for exam. One is enucleations. What is enucleations? Surgical removal of the eyeball along with the optic nerve, as you can see over here. As you know, the contents of the orbit is the eyeball, and this is the optic nerve. If we remove the eyeball by cutting over here, by cutting the optic nerve, you can see here eyeball is removed, only part of the optic nerve is over here. So if the eyeball is removed by cutting the optic nerve along with its meningeal covering and blood vessels, that is called enucleations. And the indications of the enucleations are painful blind eye. So there are two components, one is painful, another is blind. If only painful, that is not the indications of the enucleations. So if only blind eye, that is also not indications of the enucleation. The blind eye should be associated with the severe pain. And what is blind eye? When there is no perception of the light, if the patients cannot appreciate the light also, if the patients cannot appreciate the light perception, that is called no perception of the light. So sometimes it asks in the blind eye. What is blind eye? So definitions of the blind eye is when there is no perception of the light, is called blind eye. অনেক সময় স্টুডেন্টকে জিজ্ঞেস করা হয় blind eye কাকে বলো? স্যার ডাক্তার স্যার রোগী যখন কিছুই দেখে না, রোগী যে কিছুই দেখে না, how could you justify যে রোগী কিছুই দেখে না? রোগী যদি কম দেখে, রোগী যদি কম দেখে সেটা কেমনে তুমি জাস্টিফাই করবা? So the way that you can justify that is loss of light perception, that is called blind. And ugly eye, anterior staphyloма, the bulging of the uveal tissue that lined by epithelium through a weak points of the ocular pole. And thysis bulbi, there is a, what is thysis bulbi? There are 4 A's. The eyeball will be soft, shrunken, small, and sightless. Sightless means there will be no person. So you can get some image of the thysis bulbi and anterior staphyloma if you If you go to the Google and internet, you will get this image. So you can, I think it, unfortunately, I forget to put over here. So you can look at this two images, thysis bulbi. So, and some dangerous eye, and dangerous means eye means the eye is dangerous for the health. In the certain conditions, your eye is dangerous for the health. That are the called dangerous eye. Suppose one is retinoblastoma. Suppose there is retinoblastoma. If you don't remove the eyeball, if it is distant metastasis, that is dangerous. The questions of the life will be, there will be life-threatening conditions will be arise. Malignant melanoma. This is the most common malignant tumor of the adult. In case of adult, malignant tumor, intraocular tumor, and badly traumatized eye to prevent sympathetic ophthalmia. If the trauma is so bad, so that can cause a sympathetic ophthalmitis. When the trauma is so bad, anatomical integrity you cannot preserve, and there is no potential for the visions. So in that case, there is no need to keep this eyeball because it can cause a sympathetic ophthalmitis. And what is sympathetic ophthalmitis? It is sympathetic. It is a bilateral granulomatous panuveitis. And the traumatized eye is called the exciting eye, and the fellow eye is called sympathizing eye. And the exact mechanism of this disease we don't know. Though it is very rare, but it is very popular. আমাদের সময় সাবদের একটা ফ্যাসিনেশন ছিল sympathetic ophthalmitis. I have never seen in my life a case of sympathetic ophthalmitis, but it is very common talk, but common topics. Some examiners, they like it to examine sympathetic, probably due to this name, because one eye sympathizes to the other eye. আমাদের মধ্যে sympathy তেমন নাই, but I sympathize, one eye sympathize to another eye. That means কি একটা চোখ যখন খারাপ হয়, ভালো চোখটাও ওই খারাপটার জন্য খারাপ হয়ে যায়। সে বলে যে কি, সে বলে সহমরণ, এটাকে বলা হয় সহমরণ, সেলফ ডেথ। So sympathize to his fellow eye. And another is removal of the cadaveric eye. As you know, the কেউ যদি চোখ দান করে তখন তার চোখটাকে নিয়ে আমরা কর্নিয়া ট্রান্সপ্লান্ট করি, that is called the cadaveric eye. So these are the indications of the enucleation. And after enucleation, usually we implant the artificial prosthesis, but in the disadvantage of the enucleations, if you implant the eyeball, the movement will be not encouraged. There are the reductions in the ocular movements. Then next come to the eviscerations. In eviscerations, remove the eyeball contents, keeping the posterior 1/5 of the sclera and optic nerves intact. You can see here, eyeball contents is removed, but 1/5 of the sclera is remain intact. 1/5 of the sclera, here you can see, 1/5 of the sclera is intact along with the optic nerve. So, and it is the indication of the panophthalmitis. What is panophthalmitis? If the intraocular infection that extends beyond the capsules, you can see when the infective focus confined within the eyeball, that is called endophthalmitis. If the infective focus that extends beyond the sclera comes within the orbit, and that is called panophthalmitis. So in panophthalmitis, the evisceration is contraindicated. Why? You see, sorry, in panophthalmitis, the enucleation is contraindicated. Why? You see, if you do enucleations by cutting the optic nerve, as we know, there is, when you cut the optic nerve, the coverings of the optic nerve, pyometer and durometer, and there is a two space. One is subarachnoid space, another is subdural. So this subarachnoid space, the CSF, it passes through this subarachnoid into the brain. So if you do enucleations, the optic nerve will be open up, and the subarachnoid space will be open up, and through this subarachnoid space, the infective focus within the orbit, they will go to the brain and will cause meningitis, brain abscess, cavernous sinus, and causes death of the patient. So that cause. So in case of panophthalmitis, the enucleation is contraindicated. So, but in case of panophthalmitis, if you do the eviscerations, so part of the sclera is intact. So optic nerve is not open up. Your subarachnoid space is not open up. So infective focus cannot spread to the brain. So there is a barrier. এখন হয়তো তোমরা বলতে পারো যে ইনফেক্টিভ ফোকা যদি অ্যাস্ক্লেরা পিয়ার্স করে অরবিটে আসতে পারে, কেন এটা ভেদ করে অপটিক নার্ভে যেতে পারে, বাট পসিবিলিটি ইজ দ্য লেস। And if there is a penetrating ocular trauma, painful blind eye, also you can do the evisceration and expulsive choroidal hemorrhage. The advantage of these eviscerations as part of the sclera intact. So if you do the artificial prosthesis, the movement, you can get some movement, and that is cosmetically most effective, most promising. And the advantage of the evisceration over enucleations, good motility of the prosthesis, as extraocular muscles are attached to the sclera and prevent intraocular infection to aspirate into the orbit and brain, because subarachnoid space is not open up, as I mentioned. But the disadvantage is, as part of the sclera remain intact, that can cause sympathetic ophthalmitis, so it is very rare, and risks of disseminations of intraocular tumor. So if there is any intraocular, suppose in the retinoblastoma, you have to remove the total eyeball. But if you do eviscerations, part of the optic nerve will invert, and that will spread to the distant metastasis, to the optic nerve, to the distant metastasis. So another, there is a buyback question: how much optic nerve you will remove in retinoblastoma? As I mentioned, in the one of the indications of the nuclear retinoblastoma, as much as possible, as much as possible. এটা বারবার ভাইবাতে জিজ্ঞেস করে কতটুকুন অপটিক নার্ভ কাটবা, যতটুকুন টেনে, মানে ইউ হ্যাভ টু আইবল কে টেনে যতটুকুন কাটা যায়, দেন ইউ হ্যাভ টু ডু দা serial section of how much involvement is there. And exenteration is removal of the contents of the orbit. Orbital যত content আছে, eyeball, extraocular muscles, orbital fat, and the periosteal coverings of the orbit, eyelid, everything you have. This is a very drastic operation. So when you will do it, there is a orbital malignancy. If there is a, suppose is a CN term that aspirate into the orbit, or there is a mesenchymal tumor, suppose rhabdomyosarcoma, any orbital malignancy, you have to remove the whole orbit, and eyelid and intraocular malignancy that extend to the orbit. So this is about the exenterations. So I think I want to conclude today. So next, because we are running short of time, and now I can invite questions. So if you have any questions, you can keep, and now I can take the questions if you have any questions from the participants. Am I audible, dear participants? Participants?
স্যার ওই আপনি আপনাকে আমি ইনবক্সে একটা লিংক দিয়েছি, ওখানে ভিডিও আছে, ভিডিওর কমেন্টে আপনি প্রশ্ন পাবেন।
So can I interact with the participants?
আপনি তাদের কমেন্ট পড়ে দেন আপনি কথা বলতে পারেন বা আপনি রিপ্লাই দিতে পারেন, এখানে তারা শুনতে পারবে।
So I'm not,
যদি কারো কোনো কোশ্চেন থাকে।
এখানে আমি কোনো প্রশ্ন পাচ্ছি না।
পড়ে দেন আপনি কথা বলতে পারেন বা।
So আচ্ছা, আমি মনে হয় আমার একটু ইন্ট্রোডাকশন দেওয়া দরকার ছিল। আই এম প্রফেসর ডক্টর প্রকাশ কুমার চৌধুরী। আমি দীর্ঘদিন ইউএসসিতে ছিলাম, অ্যাবাউট 18 to 19 ইয়ার্স। নাও আমি অনেক কয়েকটা মেডিকেল কলেজে ভিজিটিং প্রফেসর হিসেবে আছি, তবে আমি মোস্টলি I am attached with the Bangladesh High School Chittagong branch as a director in charge, and my sub-specialty is of phaco surgery. So this is my simple introduction about me. So can I conclude, or can I finish my talk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.